Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, okay.
Good morning, everyone. Our resource person has joined us. We'll start the meeting in a few minutes.
Who all are the participants?
Hello, sir.
Who are the participants?
Sir, mainly students, PG and UG students
Okay.
of Rice College.
Okay, okay.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Budget Analysis 2021, organized by the PG Department of Commerce, Rice College Autonomous, Vijayakumar. Before I start, I would like to remind the participants to keep your microphones muted. We encourage the participants to switch on your video to make the session more lively. We'll start the session at exactly 10:30 a.m.
I'm just testing the mic. Now, I logged in twice. Therefore, this echo is coming. Can you do something about it?
Yes, sir, we'll do.
Okay.
Yes, sir, we are working on it.
I logged in twice, that's why. Let me test whether it is okay. No, it's again the echo is coming. Hello.
Acho, good morning. ജോളിച്ച കേൾക്കണ്ട പറയണ കേൾക്കണ്ട
ഹലോ ഞാൻ കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട്
പത്രിക തുടങ്ങട്ടെ അച്ചോ കൃത്യം പത്രിക
ആയിക്കോട്ടെ
ഓക്കെ അച്ചോ വിജയകുമാർ സാറ് നിങ്ങൾ സംസാരിച്ച എക്കോ വരുന്നത് ഇപ്പൊ ചെക്ക് ചെയ്ത് നോക്കട്ടെ ഞങ്ങൾ ഇവിടുത്തെ ക്ലിയർ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്
Okay, let me see. It's okay now.
Yeah.
Okay now.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Are you doing any screen sharing?
No, nothing. I will just explain things.
Okay. Yeah.
This is from 10:30 to 11:30, no?
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Ah, and
Yes, sir. From
there is
10:30 to 11:30.
there is little bit of echo even now. There is little bit of echo. That is because I logged in twice. Can you do something about it?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
When you have the echo coming, it will affect the presentation. This happened in the previous seminar also. So they corrected it from there.
Kindly hold on, sir. We are working on it. Kindly hold
Okay,
on, sir.
okay.
Yeah. Sir, can you check it now? Can you talk something?
But then I will have to return to the home screen. I've been removed from the meeting. So,
No, we can see you. We can see you. Yeah, you are visible.
but I can't see you. And then now the audio is perfect now. Audio is perfect, but I
Okay.
can't see anyone. What happened? I
think
can't see
I,
anyone here. Yeah, I can't see.
sir, are you having the laptop or your phone,
Yes,
sir?
laptop. Turn on sync. There's a message. Turn on sync. Sync is off. Turn on sync. So shall I turn on sync?
Um,
Shall I do that? Turn on sync.
can you? Okay, sir. Try it out. Try it. Let's check what is coming.
No, it's not coming. You can see me. Huh? You can see me. There's
Yes,
no
sir. Yes,
issue
sir.
there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No issues at all. We can see you. We can see you.
Then we will continue like this. Otherwise, it might get further.
Or you should do. You had another device, isn't it, sir? You have to log in with that device, and you have to minimize the sound of that device.
You mean my mobile?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. If you're logging in via two devices, I think that
No,
voice
no.
is
I didn't log in through the mobile. I logged in only through the laptop, not through the mobile.
okay. Now it's okay, so we can hear you as well as we can see you.
Then it's okay. We'll continue like that. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Budget Analysis 2021, organized by the PG Department of Commerce, Christ College, Iranyalakuda. We will start with a silent prayer. Thank you, everyone. The budget in India was first presented by the British economist James Wilson in 1960. Ever since, the first budget of independent India was presented on November 27, 1947 by the then Finance Minister R.K. Shanmugam Chetty. The annual union budgets have been scrutinized, dissected, reviewed to the core by experts in economics and laymen alike. As commerce students, it is essential that we unravel the effects of the union budget on the economy. With this in mind, the Commerce Department at Christ College holds a session on the budget every year. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2021 edition. To welcome the gathering, I invite Dr. Arun Balakrishnan, Assistant Professor, PG Department of Commerce, Christ College, and also the webinar coordinator. Sir, you're most welcome.
A very good morning to one and all present here in this program. It's a great joy to be with you all and to invite you all for this particular talk on budget, especially on budget analysis. We at the Department of Commerce in the Christ College, we always want to lecture today. So first of all, let me invite you all. In the business as well as in all the sectors of the whole world, people talk about the next big thing, the next big thing, the next big thing. So we are to a new start in the Christ College here. So we all the teaching staff and all the students here in the college, we talk about the next big thing in Christ College here. So we have dear principal Reverend Dr. Jolie Andrews CMI with us. We predict and we tell he will be probably the next big thing what Christ College is going to have. Who is so keen and he used to urge all the teachers and students to excel in education as well as to excel and do well in all the extracurricular activities also. Who wants to see that the institution grows to a higher levels. So this morning I would like to welcome Reverend Dr. Jolie Andrews CMI for this lecture. Welcome you, Father. And today we have with us a very eminent personality with us who was the former professor and head of the Department of Economics at the Sri Krishna College, Guruvayur. He holds a PhD from the University of Calicut. He writes articles in Hindu, Business Line, Financial Standard, Financial Express, Economic Times, Outlook, and all the leading newspapers in India. In 2009, an international conference conducted in Loyola College, his paper titled Financial Innovations, Booms and Disaster was awarded the best paper in that international conference in Loyola College in 2009. He is the Chief Investment Strategist for Geojit Financial Services. His interest areas are capital market, financial planning, wealth management, central banking, monetary policy, fiscal policy, and etc. Quite a number of topics. He's a very special here. And today for this program we have Dr. Vijayakumar with us, who is really who you can see in probably in some of the TV programs. He is live. He comes for discussions and debates. Who goes to probably all the colleges for talks on matters related to finance. So today we have an eminent person with us, Dr. Vijayakumar sir. So I invite you for this program, sir. Welcome. Then we have with us our dear HOD, Dr. Joshina Jose, who is a new HOD here, who wants to see that all things happen in a very good way, especially in a very efficient and effective way. So I now invite and welcome Dr. Joshina Jose, who is the head of the department for this program. And along with me in the studio, I have Professor Rensen, Professor Nilima, and my colleagues, teachers from various colleges, and my dear students. I welcome you all for this budget talk here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our principal, Reverend Dr. Jolie Andrews CMI, has always provided us with ceaseless support for all our endeavors. It is my honor to invite dear Father Principal for the presidential address. Father, please.
Thank you. I think you can hear and see me. Dr. Vijayakumar, the resource.
Yes, Father.
Thank you. Dr. Vijayakumar, the resource person of the day. Dr. Josina Jose, the HOD or the department, PG Department of Commerce. Dr. Arun Balakrishnan, who plays the welcome note. The respected faculty members of the department and my dear friends. I'm very happy to note that the PG Department of Commerce has come forward with a discussion on the Union Budget 2021. I place my special appreciation to Dr. Vijayakumar, the consented to become the resource person of the day. I especially appreciate the Department of Commerce, the HOD, and the webinar coordinator, Dr. Josina Jose, and the webinar convener, Dr. Josina Jose, and the webinar coordinator, Dr. Arun Balakrishnan, and all the organizing committee members for coming forward in order to make this program a success. To the friends and to the neighboring faculty members and to the students, This would be a wonderful opportunity for all of you, I would say, in order to interact with one of the best person, one of the best minds of India, I would say, who can speak, who can give you a bird's view of what has really happened in the Parliament of India when the budget was presented for the financial year. So you know what is what, in which all areas you would have to move forward, which all areas you would have to um, work hard, and which are the opening avenues as far as the budget has been concerned. So get yourself prepared for this wonderful season and use this opportunity so that you may be able to come forward with the innovative ideas as far as the session has been concerned. Now, a word about the Christ College. Christ College is perhaps the largest student enrolling college of this academic year. We have now more than around 4,400 students, the largest the college as far as the student enrollment has been concerned. And we have got a very, very strong PG Department of Commerce that has been wonderfully assisted by and supported by the self-financing wings also. We've got a variety of courses. We have got become finance, become taxation, and become professional, and hope we will have or start to become logistics in near future also. So have a wonderful time. We are very grateful to you, Vijayakumar sir, for your um, coming over to this college to present a webinar to you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. For today's session on the Union Budget, we have rendered the services of Dr. Vijayakumar, a highly respected figure in academic circles in Kerala, who joined Geojit in 2010, prior to which he was working for Sri Krishna College, Guruvayur, as a professor and head of the Department of Economics. Dr. Vijayakumar has an MA and a PhD in economics from Calicut University. As Chief Investment Strategist for Geojit's Financial Services, Dr. Vijayakumar speaks on topics related to capital market, financial planning, and wealth management. Keen observer of the financial market, Dr. Vijayakumar presented a plethora of papers and delivered numerous lectures on capital market and financial national and international seminars. His paper, Financial Innovations, Boom and Disaster, was pitched the best paper in international conference held at Loyola College in Chennai in Jan of 2009. He is also a certified trainer from UTI Institute of Capital Markets. Dr. Vijayakumar has authored 4 books on economics, published 210 articles, and presented 12 papers in international seminars and 72 in national seminars. His articles find a regular column in the top national dailies like The Hindu, Business Line, Economic Times, and Business Standard, and many more. It is indeed our honor to have Sir with us today. With immense pleasure, I invite Dr. Vijayakumar for his session on the Union Budget. Sir, please.
Good morning. I'm very glad to be with all of you,
morning,
even
sir.
though virtually. I should thank Father, the faculty of the Department of Commerce, and all the students for this honor of addressing you on this budget 2021. Normally, I used to come to Christ College in Nalakuda and address students physically. I love making a physical presentations, seeing the students and participants in their physical form, not in this virtual reality. Hopefully next year, COVID will be behind us, and we will be, I hope, in a position to have our usual physical format presentations on the budget and the question and answer sessions that follow. Let me start off by telling you why the budget is important. Now, The budget is defined as the financial statement of the proposed expenditure and expected revenue for the coming year. This is an accountant's perspective of the budget. Proposed expenditure and expected revenue for the coming year. And if the expenditure is higher than the revenue, the budget will be a balance, it will be a deficit budget. If the revenue is higher than the expenditure, it will be a surplus budget. If both are balanced, which is rarely the case, it will be a balanced budget. So this is how accountants define a budget. But from the economics perspective, from the perspective of the economist, the budget is not just a financial statement of revenue and expenditure and deficit. The budget is an instrument of fiscal policy. It is an instrument of fiscal policy that can bring about desirable changes, big changes, profound changes with long-term implications for the economy. That is why the budget becomes a major economic document. Manmohan Singh's 1991 budget is often referred to as a historic budget. It's called the historic budget because that budget completely changed India's economic policy, the policy that we have been following from independence for 4 decades up to 1991. It dismantled the license permit quota Raj to a large extent, though not completely. It encouraged private initiative and enterprise. It brought down the tax rates. It integrated the Indian economy with the global economy. And all the governments that followed, that Narasimha Rao government of 91-96, whether it was the Devagowda government or the Vajpayee government, or again the Manmohan Singh government, or the Devagowda government, again now the Narendra Modi government, all the governments have been following the path of economic reforms, going along the path of liberalization. That has been the policy. So 1991 was a policy which completely changed India's economic policy. So that is why that budget is called the historic budget. And as a result of that introduction of liberalization in 1991, the Indian economy completely got transformed. For the next 30 years, India became the fastest growing, of course, last year, this year, 2021, is an abnormal year, which has been impacted by the COVID. The pandemic has impacted many segments of the economy. So till then, the Indian economy has been the fastest growing, second fastest growing large economy in the world, second only to China. And the businesses boomed. Poverty came down drastically. And some sectors, some segments, like the IT segment, which was $100 million, $100 million in 1991, is now $152 billion. The top 4 companies in IT, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, and HCL Technologies, only these 4 companies employed 10 lakh young people directly and 40 lakh indirectly. And Indian IT industry has become an industry which is envied globally. TCS is the IT company with the largest market capitalization globally. So all this has been brought about by the policy of liberalization, which was initiated by Manmohan Singh in 1991. That's why it is called a historic budget. So I'm telling you this just to emphasize the point that the budget is not just a financial statement of revenue, expenditure, and deficit. It is an instrument of fiscal policy that can bring about big changes in the economy. As students of commerce, management, and economics, you have to understand that. Now, this year's budget presented by Nirmala Sitharaman also would be described by future historians, economic historians, as a historic budget. Because like the 1991 budget, also this budget change marks a major change in India's economic thinking and India's economic policy, particularly on privatization. I will explain this in some detail slowly. Now, this budget, I'm not going into the details of allocation, what or amount of money has been allocated for agriculture, for industry, for manufacturing, for infrastructure, for women and child development, for the Manrega program, all this. I'm sure as students of serious students of economics and commerce, you would have studied or read all about this in newspapers, would have watched some programs on the TV also. So I'm not going into the details of allocations and all that. I will just focus on the main themes of the budget, the main ideas in the budget, and how this budget is going to impact the Indian economy, and also youngsters like you who are in colleges right now going forward. Now, from a macro perspective, before I go into the details of the budget, from the macro perspective, economic policy broadly can be classified into monetary policy and fiscal policy, very broadly. Monetary policy is in the domain of the central bank. The government does not have any role. India's central bank is largely independent. It was not the case previously. Now it is largely independent. The central bank governor can say no. And now it is not the central bank governor who decides monetary policy. It is MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, which has got independent directors and independent economists, including academicians, in the Monetary Policy Committee. Formerly, it was done by the Reserve Bank alone. Now it is a Monetary Policy Committee. Therefore, monetary policy and fiscal policy, these are two broad macro policy which impact economic thinking, economic policy, and these will have huge impact on the performance of the economy, performance of different industries, taxation, etc. So monetary policy is the domain of the central bank. Fiscal policy is the policy of the government regarding taxation, expenditure, and borrowing. That is the definition of fiscal policy. Policy of the government regarding taxation, expenditure, and borrowing. And fiscal policy is implemented through the budget. Monetary policy is implemented, every 2 months the policy changes. Formerly, we had only 2 monetary policies a year, then 3 monetary policy. But in this very uncertain world in which we live, this is an age of uncertainty. The world is changing very fast. Economies are changing very fast. Economy is very dynamic. So exchange rate, currency rates, crude rates, commodity rates, all this change very fast. Therefore, the central bank also will have to tweak their policies. That is why we have a new monetary policy, a policy statement, or some tweaking every 2 months. So these are the two broad policy instruments: the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. Budget is a part of the fiscal policy, and it is implemented by the government. I told you that this year's fiscal policy, that is the budget being presented in the parliament by the finance minister, is a historic document, because for the first time in India's economic history, budget history, the government has declared privatization as a major plank of its economic program. Even though we have been encouraging private enterprise, private business from 1991 onwards, we did not go the whole hog as far as privatization is concerned. We have been encouraging private sector. We have been encouraging private enterprise. We have been giving all sorts of assistance for private investment. But we have been a little bit slow in privatizing public sector undertakings. The reason is privatization is not very popular, not just in India, in most developing countries, poor countries particularly, privatization is not very popular. Because privatization, people assume, is beneficial for the private sector, for the corporate sector, not for the ordinary people of the country. This is a wrong thinking, actually. In Kerala, particularly because of the influence of left ideology. Left ideology is a part of India's social outlook, not just the left parties. All parties are left of center. At least in proclamation, in practice, it can be different. So privatization, there has been no consensus on privatization in India, even though all governments from 1991 onwards. That's why I refer to the Narasimha Rao government, Devagowda government, the Vajpayee government, again the Manmohan Singh government, and now the Modi government. All these governments have been disinvesting, selling equity of public sector undertakings, but they have not been using the word privatization extensively because there is no consensus. In developed countries, there is a consensus on privatization, but not so in the developing countries. But this budget marks a break from that, and this budget has openly declared that privatization is on the agenda of government's thinking policy. Privatization will be a priority area, and the government has declared that 2 nationalized banks, public sector undertaking bank, PSU bank as they are called. 2 PSU banks will be privatized, that is, a majority government equity will be sold. And for 1 insurance company also, the government's majority equity will be sold. Government will be retaining equity, but the majority equity will be sold, and this will be the beginning of privatization in right earnest. This is for the first time the government is using the word privatization in a budget document. So that is a declaration of intent. This is very bold. Why do I say this is bold, and why do I say this is good and desirable? The reason is last several decades of global experience, particularly the post-Second World War experience, and the experience during the last 4 decades or so, tells us that it is none of government's business to be in business. The private sector, private companies, entrepreneurs, private investors, entrepreneurs driven by private initiative and enterprise are better in running business. Government is not good in running business. Therefore, it should be left to the private sector to run business. And the government should withdraw from many areas where the government is not competent to manage. And the government should focus more on what we call in economics public goods. Government should focus on education. The government should focus on healthcare and well-being. The government should focus on environment. And in a poor country like India, the government has got a very important role in helping the poor people by giving them subsidized food, encouraging youngsters to study in centers of higher learning with scholarships. I know one student of Christ College in Irinjalakuda reached a very high position as the role of an economist. Jerome is his name. Unfortunately, he died a few years back. He reached the somewhat top middle level in the Reserve Bank of India. So yeah, very, very competent, smart, very skilled youngsters should be allowed to pursue higher education with scholarships from the government. So that is the role of the government. Education, public health, running hospitals, assisting the private sector to manage these well. Christ College, for instance, is in the private sector, even though it is an aided college. I'm sure, as a person who has visited the Christ College and lectured in Christ College at least some 15 to 20 times in the last, let us say, 20 years, I know there are very few colleges which are as effectively run, efficiently run by Christ College. So it should be left to institutions like that. But then the government also has got a role. So the government's focus should be on education, public health, environmental protection, subsidized food grains to the poor people, giving homes to the homeless, taking care of the elderly who do not have anyone to look after them. This should be the role of the government and not running business. Business should be left to the private enterprise. There will be some areas where the government can continue. And that is why the government has made it very clear, not only in this budget, in the mini budgets presented in last year, in 2020 also, the government had very clearly, categorically stated that government will be only in 4 strategic areas. 4 strategic areas have been identified. And in these 4 strategic areas, there will be a minimum of 1 central government undertaking, central public sector undertaking, and a maximum of 4, not more than 4. So if there are more than 4 central public sector undertakings in a strategic area, that will be divested. The minimum will be 1. And coming to non-strategic areas, the government will be completely withdrawing from non-strategic areas like running hotels, running automobile companies. The government will be completely withdrawing from that. That has been declared. And this year, we will be privatizing a few public sector undertakings apart from the 2 banks and 1 insurance company. Let me tell you why privatization, just to remove the wrong impression about privatization. Let me give you an example. It was in 2002 that the government, it was the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, that privatized Hindustan Zinc. Hindustan Zinc, manufacturing zinc and lead, was a central public sector undertaking. The government thought it is better to leave it to the private sector. And the government sold 45% of the equity in Hindustan Zinc. And Hindustan Zinc was finding it difficult to make profits. It was finding it difficult to compete. And the company did not have money for modernization, technological upgradation. So in 1992, the government sold 45% of the equity. It was sort of privatized. And the bidder who got that company was Sterlite Industries, Indian company Sterlite Industries. And Sterlite is one of the world leaders in the metals space. You know what Sterlite did? When the government sold, let me give you these figures. The government, to make the point very clear, because this is not understood by most people, even by the leaders who criticize that. While participating in an Asianet discussion, I had an argument with one former MP who was criticizing this, and I gave him the figures. He was not aware of these details. That's why I'm giving you the figures. When the government sold 45% of the equity in Hindustan Zinc, the government got 769 crores. And the company went to Sterlite Industries. It is known as Hindustan Zinc now. The company invested massive amount of capital. It went for best technology available in the world, technological modernization, and the company became a globally competent company, started growing very fast, started making big profits. And you know, the government was keeping 30% of the equity with itself. And now, if the government sells that 30% equity which the government is holding, the government will be getting 30,000 crores of rupees. 30,000 crores. This is the advantage of privatization, right? And also during the last 17 years, the government of India got 17,000 crores as dividend from Hindustan Zinc. And Hindustan Zinc is the 2nd largest producer of zinc in the world, 2nd largest producer of lead in the world, and one of the largest producers of silver in the world. So who gains? The government gets 30,000 crores by selling the equity now. That 30,000 crores can be spent on education, on healthcare, on development of roads, water supply, which the people need. So this is why we need privatization. But privatization is, as I told you, politically not acceptable even now. This is not a problem faced by India alone. When Margaret Thatcher initiated privatization in UK in 1979, there was big opposition, including from top-ranking economists. including some Nobel laureates. But she was very firm. So even though it is 40 years since Margaret Thatcher very successfully privatized some companies, and also later on countries like France also started the privatizing. Labour government in left of center, Labour government in France privatized. Normally, conservative governments privatize and Labour governments nationalize. Now we are seeing the trend of Labour governments privatizing, because that is the norm now. It is good for the government to be only in strategic areas and allow the private sector to run business. This is the essence of privatization. But of course, the government has a very important role in ensuring that there is competition. That is the government's job. That is the job of the regulator. For each industry, which is very crucial, like insurance, we have TRAI. For telecom, we have the Telecom Regulatory Authority, TRAI. For insurance, we have the Insurance Regulatory Authority. For banking, we have the central bank. So regulation is required. And the government's job is to ensure that there is competition in the market. This is the dominant economic thinking of our time. And the government has bitten the bullet and properly, very prominently declared that we will be going along a privatization route. But I expect political challenges. I expect political problems, because right now we are having the farmer strike in India. So it is a very good example of, this is my personal opinion, a very good example of how reforms can be sabotaged. So that's a different issue. I am not going to that. So this is the hallmark of this budget. An open declaration of privatization and the government divesting from many public sector undertaking. Actually, major part of government's profits from PSUs. There's an article in Economic Times today. You can read that on the Auditor General, Controller and Auditor General's report on the performance of central public sector undertakings. 189 central public sector undertakings have incurred a loss of 1.4 lakh crores, accumulated losses. And 77 central public sector undertakings have completely lost their capital, net worth. The entire net worth have been completely eroded. And there are some central public sector undertakings which are making profits. That is all in oil, like ONGC, Oil India, Indian Oil, BPCL, HPCL, Coal India, NTPC, in those areas. So this is a major historic deviation in this budget, which marks a major thinking, major deviation from the economic policy that we have been following. Even though liberalization and an increasing role for the private sector was introduced, even from 1991 onwards, we were going slow on further reforms. So this budget accelerates economic reforms in India. That's the first thing. Secondly, there is a lot of emphasis. I told you, I don't know whether I mentioned it or not. You might have read it in the newspapers. This budget is crafted on 6 pillars. 6 pillars which forms the foundation, if I may say so, of this budget. These 6 pillars are: one is number 1, health and well-being, particularly in the context of the pandemic and the damage it has done to the public health and other people at large in the public health infrastructure. Also, the government is focusing more on health and well-being than infrastructure, physical, financial, plus other all forms of infrastructure. Inclusive growth for an aspirational India, because aspirational India in new segments, what is called the gig economy now, which is not in the organized sector. Many in businesses which are operating on technology platforms. To give you an example, Swiggy, for instance, or Zomato, the home delivery boys. All these are the people who are working on the modern technology platform of Flipkart, Amazon, etc. There are very good, bold initiatives on making these people also part of inclusive growth in India. I'm not going into the details. Then there is the reinvigorating the human capital, innovations and R&D, and finally minimum government and maximum governance. These are the 6 pillars on which this budget has been built. Almost all of you would have read about this in the newspaper, the 6 pillars. And the budgetary allocations also are in accordance with this 6 pillars. A lot of money being earmarked for these different programs. There's a lot of emphasis on infrastructure development, because an economy in India this year, that is the financial year 2021, the year ending on 31st March 2021, we have 2 more months to go. The year India will be clocking a GDP growth of minus 7.7%. GDP will be contracting by 7.7% because in the first quarter we had a complete lockdown of the economy, and the GDP contracted by 23.9% in the first quarter. So subsequently there was a slight recovery, and the last quarter, we are in the last quarter now, economy is doing exceedingly well. And in the next year, the projection is Indian economy will grow by 11%. This is the government's projection, but independent observers and think tanks like the IMF has projected a higher growth rate. For example, I was reading the latest report from the IMF. IMF's projection is 11.5% growth for India, because if you go by the leading indicators of economic growth, Indian economy is doing exceedingly well. Let me briefly digress and tell you what the leading indicators are. Now, economists rely more on leading indicators rather than past data. For example, Q1 GDP, Q2 GDP, inflation for December, inflation for November, index of industrial production for December. These are all past data. To understand what is happening now, and what is likely to happen next month or months and quarters going forward, you have to look at high frequency indicators, leading indicators. And what are these high frequency indicators? For example, electricity consumption. If electricity consumption is going up, that means economic activity is going up. There is increased production in the economy. GST collections. If GST collections are going up, that means there is increased production, increased sales. If sales and production of important articles, crucial, strategically important articles, goods like automobiles, heavy commercial vehicles, cement, steel, if the sales of cement and steel are increasing, that means construction activity is picking up. More jobs are being created in construction. If heavy commercial vehicle sales are increasing, that means transportation of raw materials and finished goods are increasing. So that is all indicative of an economic pickup. And all these leading indicators, high frequency indicators, are showing that economic activity is rebounding. That is why now a large number of economic think tanks are saying that we can even grow by 11.5%, even 12% GDP growth next year. And without doubt, I don't have any doubt about that, next financial year, India will be the fastest growing large economy in the world. Mainly because of the base effect, contraction of 7.7% this year. So on the back of this favorable base effect, we will be growing much faster next year. And in order to facilitate this, the government has focused on these 6 pillars. And one of the important pillars is infrastructure capital development. And the government has set apart a huge amount of money, 5.54 lakh crores on infrastructure development. You might have read about a project called National Infrastructure Pipeline. It's an ambitious program for India. National Infrastructure Pipeline. It's a joint venture, if I may say so, between the central government, state government, and the private sector. 39% investment by the central government, 39% investment by the state government, all state governments put together, and 22% by the private sector. And this national infrastructure pipeline 7,400 projects have already been identified. Investment has started. And 5.54, and the total amount of investment for this is a 5-year project, 2020 to 2025, on this national infrastructure pipeline is 111 lakh crores of rupees. So this will give us a very good infrastructure, and that infrastructure, particularly roads, ports, etc., that will be a major platform on which Indian economy can grow very fast in the coming years. That is one point which I would like to emphasize: the focus of the budget on infrastructure, on physical infrastructure, and there are other, social infrastructure also is important, and that's why reinvigorating the human capital, that is given a lot of importance by the government. So human capital, that is where you come in, students. Human capital, because the human resource is the most important resource. We are living in a knowledge economy, and in the knowledge economy, the skill is the most important input, the critical input, skill levels. So high levels of skills and competence can come from education. That is why there is a lot of focus on that. And now, so that is why I emphasize this infrastructure in some detail. Now, normally when we discuss the budget, taxes are discussed in some detail. Taxation is discussed, but then taxation has got a lot of its has lost a lot of its significance, because as you know, taxes can be broadly classified into direct taxes and indirect taxes. Indirect taxes are now mainly the indirect taxes, GST, and the GST rates are determined by not the central government, not through the budget. GST rates are decided by the GST Council. The GST Council is the final authority on that, not the central government, not the finance minister, not the budget. Of course, the finance minister is part of the GST Council. She is only one part of the GST Council. All the finance ministers of all the states of India are part of the GST Council. So it's a very, very federal arrangement. So since indirect taxes, mainly GST, are in the domain of the GST Council, well, the budget, the central budget has got a lot of, lost its significance. Even the state budget also, the finance minister is not making any major proclamations as far as GST is concerned, because it is beyond their jurisdiction. Of course, there are some, even now, there are some taxes like some state excise as far as states are concerned, mainly tax on liquor. Then there are some central taxes like a customs duty, which is tweaked here and there. This year also there are some minor changes. The major tax as far as direct tax is concerned is the corporate tax and the personal income tax. And as far as corporate taxes and the personal income taxes are concerned, there are no changes at all. Big changes were introduced last year, when corporate tax was cut to 22%, 22% plus surcharge and cess makes the central, the corporate tax rate as 25.2% in India right now, and there is no change regarding corporate tax. And the personal income tax also, in the last budget, the finance minister introduced a new tax system without any exemptions. We have a 3 tax slab system which we have been following for many years, ever since Chidambaram's dream budget of 1996-97, and that system still continues with the 5% tax, 20%, 30%, 3 tax slabs. That continues. Apart from that, Nirmala Sitharaman herself introduced a new system last year, where you can have lower taxes without any exemption. So you will not be eligible for any exemption under ATC. So as far as to cut a long story short, there are no changes at all regarding personal income tax and corporate tax. So nothing to say on that. There are some minor changes. The government has tweaked the provident fund contribution. Whenever a tax relief is introduced, some people will be exploiting tax. I'll give you the example of public provident fund. Now, anybody can put money in public provident fund. And when you put money in public provident fund, it is called triple E, exempt, exempt, exempt. Exempt under 80C, maximum of 1.5 lakhs rupees. Exempt under 80C when you invest the money. It is exempt when the interest accrues. There is no tax deduction at source. There is no tax deduction at all. And if it is exempt when you redeem your PPRs, right? So it is actually an incentive. Exemption when you invest the money, exemption when the interest accrues, and exemption when the investment is redeemed. But that loophole was exploited, and the government found that many very rich people have invested crores of rupees. One person had invested 55 crores of rupees in public provident fund. Why should a person who invests 55 crores of rupees be given exemption? So that is why the government has, this is a right move. I support that. Government has rightly fixed the maximum limit of 2.5 lakh a year as the amount eligible for exemption. People can put more amount of money, there is no problem. But then the extra amount that is invested, when that amount is redeemed, well, the interest accrued on that, when it is redeemed, will be subject to taxation. Anyway, these are all very sophisticated, complex areas in taxation. As students, you may not be very keen to know that. Similarly, there is a similar provision regarding ULIPs also, ULIP-linked insurance plans. There has been this exemption, the loophole, which again has been plugged by the government by fixing a maximum limit of 2.5 lakh rupees a year. These two are right steps which need to be appreciated. Rich people need not be given tax concessions. So that is about the taxation part. So I repeat this point, indirect taxes, that is in the area of the GST Council. Therefore, the government has not done much about that, only some tweaking of the customs duty and all that. Now let me come to an area, I don't know whether we have time. We had time only up to 11:30, and I would like to set apart some time for question and answer session also. So let me conclude by making a few more remarks. So one thing which I don't like about this budget, and nothing is a perfect thing, budget also will have its deficiencies, and it's impossible to bring out a document which is perfect and acceptable to everyone. If you ask me to point out one area where there is a weakness or deficiency, I'm saying this as a constructive criticism, is that the deficit is high. The budget, the fiscal deficit is this year 9.5% of the GDP, much higher than most people thought. And for the coming year, the fiscal deficit will be brought down to 6.8% of the GDP. It has to be brought down because the problem with fiscal deficit is if you borrow more, your debt will increase. More than 30% of government's revenue is from borrowing. But if you start borrowing like that, your debt will increase, your interest outgo will increase. There will be what economists call the crowding out of private investment, because when the government borrows major part of the savings available in the economy, the productive private sector will be left only with a lesser amount of money, and therefore there is what economists call the crowding out of private investment. And also, more importantly, increase in fiscal deficit will result in inflation. So always higher fiscal deficit has translated into higher inflation, and when inflation rises, the central bank, the RBI, will have to increase the interest rate. Now, a major tailwind for the economy, a major supporting factor for the economy is the low interest rate. I told you about the increased offtake in cement, steel, and the pickup in consumption. Do you know the reason? The reason is home loans have become very, very cheap. Historically low rates for the home loans. Now, today I saw an advertisement of HDFC Bank. HDFC Bank is giving a home loan for 6.8%. For youngsters who are employed, this is the best time to buy a home. 6.8% is the interest on a home loan. When I constructed my home, this home in which I am sitting right now, the home loan interest rate was 11.5%. 11.5. Now it is 6.8. So if you have a good credit score, you get a very attractive home loan, and the EMI, equated monthly installment, will be 25 to 30% lower than what it used to be. So this low interest rate has been a major tailwind, a major supporting factor, a facilitating factor for automobile industry and the construction industry. These are the two industries which have what economists call the high employment multiplier. That means it creates a lot of jobs. So if the fiscal deficit continues to be high, there will be inflation. And if there is inflation, the central bank will have to raise the interest rate, because that is a monetary response for a higher inflation. And this advantage of low interest rate will be gone, because the banks also will be forced to raise the interest rates on home loans, automobile loans, etc. This is one negative area in the budget. And everyone knows that this is an unusual year, an abnormal year, where some risk taking is required, and that is why the government has done that. Hopefully, if the economy grows by more than 11%, as we expect in the coming year, a lot of jobs will be created. And the Indian IT industry, technology industry which is using human resources like the students over here, India is going to be a superpower in these areas. Not just in IT, a large number of areas. IT is not just in computer software. A major globally popular name in educational segment now is a Malayali Baiju Ravindran. With Baijus, all of you must be familiar with Baijus. Baiju Ravindran, a boy who was born and brought up in Kannur in Kerala, can now raise 5,000 crores if he wants in 2 weeks, because his company Baijus is one of the world leaders in the online education segment, one of the world leaders with a very high market capitalization. The market value of this company is now put at more than 15,000 crores. Very difficult to imagine some 10 years ago, in Malayali coming up and becoming a major player in the education field. So a large number of companies like that are coming up. So as far as students are concerned, what you have to do is to improve your skill levels, your knowledge levels, your competence level. Today you learn not just from the classroom, you learn beyond the classroom. And the internet is a treasure trove of information and knowledge, where you can learn a lot of things. So in the coming months and years, improve your levels of knowledge, learn as much as possible. The students of commerce, management, economics, read Economic Times, Business Standard, excellent newspaper, Business Line. There are a large number of opportunities coming up. So we'll have to set apart some. It's already 11:28 now. I don't know how much time we have left. So if you have some questions and answers for questions, I'll be very glad to move to the question answer part.
Thank you, sir, for such an insightful session. We have time for your queries. The participants are kindly requested to switch on your cameras, unmute your microphones, introduce yourselves, and then ask your questions. So I myself have a question, actually, sir.
Please go ahead.
Sir, the word about the opposition has always raised against this budget was that it is kind of crony capitalistic. Is that true, or is it just a political standpoint? And the second question, the criticism against this budget has been regarding direct transfers to the poor people regarding at the time of COVID. Is this direct transfer practical in a country with more than 1.3 billion people?
Well, regarding the opposition's job is not to support and praise what the government does. Their job is to oppose. Of course, ideally, the opposition should appreciate some good things being done by the government also, but then it does not happen in modern democracies, particularly very noisy democracies like India. I remember a few months back when Shashi Tharoor, the different kind of politician, he's a global intellectual, when Shashi Tharoor appreciated a couple of things which the government did, there was vehement criticism from his own party. He was told, this is not your job, right? So crony capitalism, this is what this government has been saying against the previous government, right? Manmohan Singh's governments that we had from 2004 to 9, from 9 to 14 was criticized as being a government for the crony capitalism. So that criticism will always be there. And crony capitalism is a problem in developing countries because there is a nexus between politicians and corporates. The job of the government, the job of the media, the job of everyone is to expose crony capitalism if it exists. And the job of the government is to create the institutional framework where there is no crony capitalism, there is very good competition. And there is competition, the crony capitalism will disappear. Your second question was about the direct benefit transfer, right? Now, in India, we have technology where direct benefit transfer has been very effective. Do you know, in 2020, crores or several hundreds of crores of rupees have been transferred to 30 crore Jandan accounts with a click of a mouse. To give you a contrast, now we have this what is called JAM, Jandan Aadhaar Mobile, the JAM Trinity. And this is a model. The reason why we have very good brains like Nindan Nilekani who worked on that, and we have the best IT professionals in the world. A lot of time has been spent on that. And to give you an example, in the US, when they transferred money as a part of the fiscal stimulus, they send checks by post to all the American citizens. Money was sent by post. In India, the money was transferred to the accounts, 30 crore accounts. So this is possible. Why do you say it is it possible? We have shown that it is possible because we have this JAM Trinity which other countries do not have. In fact, some countries like Brazil are learning from India how to do that. And also the PM Kisan, 6,000 crores, 6,000 rupees rather, 6,000 rupees being transferred to the accounts of farmers. The problem is not in transferring the money. The problem is there is no political consensus on that. Didi in West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee that is, she has not accepted this. She says, we don't want this program in our state. So the central government cannot transfer this money. So that is politics, not the problem is not that of technology. Any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Sir, myself Francis Joshi. I'm studying MCOM first year in Christ College. Sir, my question is on the defense aspect. From the past few years, we have been facing a number of threats from our neighboring countries. So in the present budget of 2020-21, not adequate, in my personal perspective view, not adequate funds have been allocated to the defense funds. So in such situations, in your opinion, sir, I'm asking your opinion, do you think that the present budget is adequate enough for the budget, or should there be more?
Well, I'm not an expert on defense, but this question that you raised just now, it's a very valid, appropriate question. And this question has been posed to the finance minister herself and some top advisors of the government, advising the government on defense. Now, the government's answer was, we had made a big allocation for budget last year. There was a big spurt in allocation last year, and that is sufficient. Now, another explanation that is given is we are tweaking our foreign policy also. There's a big change in foreign policy. India is part of the Quad initiative now, which consists of, apart from the United States, Australia, Japan, and India. And India is playing an important role in this sort of a coalition against the Chinese aggression to be an antidote to China. And also, China is the main threat to the US also now. And the US is considering Chinese initiatives in the South Pacific. China has problems not only with India, China has problems with Vietnam, with Hong Kong, with Malaysia, all these countries. And China has a policy of aggression. And unlike India, China is a single party dictatorship, and they have a president for life there, and there is no free press. Therefore, they can do whatever it likes. So the Chinese expansionism is a major concern, a major threat. And under the leadership of the US, Japan, Australia, India is also part of that. So we cannot be withdrawing from non-aligned movement on a fine day and moving to the NATO camp. But for practical purpose, a lot of action is taking place. And that is why there is not as much allocation to the defense sector as many people would want it to be. Next question.
Sir, I am Naveen Paul from
Yes,
third
sir.
year degree.
Yes.
Why are we always going for a deficit budget? Isn't it drain a large amount of revenue as a way of payment of interest?
Naveen, it's a very, very good question. There was a time when deficit budgets are were regarded as taboo. Finance minister should balance the budget. A surplus budget is good. But then the problem is, in a developing country, you cannot expect your budget surplus to fund all your finances. The expenditure commitments and the expenditure targets and the challenges facing a government in a developing economy are so huge that the normal sources of revenue are not sufficient. That is why you are going for a deficit financing through borrowing, etc. Borrowing is fine so long as the borrowed money is spent on capital expenditure. When I used to teach students in the college, I used to tell them that if a person is borrowing, let us say, 10,000 rupees from a bank to buy a cow, that borrowing is fine because it is a capital expenditure. The cow will soon start giving milk. You can sell the milk and repay the loan. But if you are borrowing that money from a bank and spending that money on a feast or a sadhya or whatever, maybe a family requirement, whatever it is, on the funeral, well, that is not a capital expenditure, that is a revenue expenditure, because that expenditure will not generate revenue. So capital borrowing is fine, deficit is fine, so long as the deficit is spent on capital expenditure, which will generate a revenue, which then can be used for repayment of loan. It is just like you are borrowing money from a bank to start a business. If the business succeeds, you repay the loan, you become a successful business person, and you create jobs for others also. Does it make sense?
Thanks, sir.
Good. Any other questions? Need not be on the budget. Need not be on the budget. If you have some questions on the economy, global economy, or Indian economy in general, I would be glad to explain. If I know the answer, I don't know the answer for everything.
So I think that's it.
Okay, and in that case, you can continue.
Thank you to all the
I should say,
participants.
before you make the concluding remarks, I should thank the Christ College, which I always appreciated and admired as a center of excellence in Kerala. Hopefully, in the coming years, we can transit from this virtual meeting and have a physical meeting where I can see all of you personally. So thank you very much for this opportunity and honor of addressing all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such an enlightening session, sir. To propose the vote of thanks, I invite Ms. Divya Pais, final year MCOM student of Christ College. Divya, please.
Good morning to all. Today I am here to propose vote of thanks on behalf of Christ College Autonomous Irmialakuda. I extend my sincere gratitude to the Chief Guest of the Day, Dr. Vijayakumar, Chief Investment Strategist, Geojit Financial Services, for providing us with such an insightful and enlightening session on budget analysis. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to thank our beloved principal, Reverend Dr. Jolie Andrews, for delivering us the presidential address. Thank you, Father. Now, I extend my gratitude to HOD of Commerce Department, Dr. Joshina Jose, for organizing this webinar and also giving us an opportunity for being a part of this webinar. Thank you, ma'am. Also, I thank Dr. Arun Balakrishnan, the coordinator of this webinar, for wonderfully coordinating this. Now, I thank all the teaching and non-teaching faculties for being a part of this webinar. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants for being the best part of this and for making this webinar a success. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Divya. With that, we have come to the end of today's session. This college always sets the bar high in all aspects, and the webinars and other academic events organized by the college are a testament to the high standards. We wholeheartedly express our gratitude for your support. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I'd like to remind the participants that the feedback form will be shared on the WhatsApp group shortly. Thank you all. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you once again.
Ranson John, is Professor Ranson here in the meeting? Can I talk to him, please? Ranson? Yes, yes.
Yeah.